The scrape of chairs still rings in my head, my own family setting the table without my name. Still, I just stood there, one hand on the glass, watching them laugh like I was never part of it. As the scent of rosemary and wine drifted through the window, it turned sharp, like memory dressed as perfume. While they passed plates and carved legacy into silence, I wrote one number on a check. That's when I knew. They didn't forget me. They erased me, on purpose. So I bought the room, every chair, every light. And this year, their names aren't on a single seat. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The coastal air had turned crisp, that thin savanna chill that carried the scent of brine and pine through open windows. Lena Blake stood by her mailbox, fingertips tracing the stack of envelopes. Utility bills, catalogs, a glossy postcard from a local realtor. No thick ivory envelope. No gold-embossed family crest. Thanksgiving was 2 weeks away. The invitation should have come by now. Inside her beach cottage, the afternoon light fell across her neatly arranged table. A bowl of tangerines, a vase of dried hydrangeas, 2 candlesticks that had once stood in her former dining room. The one her ex-husband's sister now presided over like a throne. She set the mail aside and picked up the phone. Mitchell answered after the 4th ring. "Hey, Mom, everything okay?" His tone was polite, neutral, too neutral. The kind of tone people used when they already knew what the call was about. "I was just wondering if plans were the same this year," Lena said carefully. "Caroline hosting again?" A pause. The faint sound of a keyboard clicking in the background. "Yeah, she is. We're doing something smaller this year. You know how it gets, space-wise." Lena closed her eyes. She knew exactly how big that dining room was. She'd designed it 30 years ago. The mahogany table alone seated 16. "I see," she said softly. "Well, I can always bring a chair." Before he could reply, Lauren's voice cut through on speaker. "Mitchell, is that your mom? Just tell her. We're keeping it immediate family this year, okay?" The words slid through the receiver like ice water. Lena stood perfectly still. "I understand," she said finally. "You have a good holiday, both of you." "Mom," Mitchell started, but she'd already ended the call. The house fell quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator. Outside, the waves rolled in steady, indifferent. Lena placed the phone face down on the counter and took a long breath. Then, deliberately, she began setting her own table. 1 plate, 1 wine glass, 1 linen napkin folded just so. By evening, the sun had dipped low enough to turn her kitchen walls gold. That was when she heard the knock at the door. "Come in," she called. Nina Hall stepped inside, her presence filling the small cottage with a calm steadiness Lena had always relied on. She carried a grocery bag in one hand, the faint smell of cinnamon escaping from it. "I brought pie," Nina said, setting it on the counter. Her eyes moved over the single-place table setting. "You expecting company?" Lena smiled faintly. Apparently not. Nina studied her, the way only an old friend could. "They told you no?" "They said there wasn't room?" Lena ran her thumb along the rim of the plate. "After 40 years of carving that turkey, I suppose my chair finally wore out." Nina gave a small, humorless laugh. "They'll regret this." "Maybe," Lena said, though her tone wasn't bitter, just tired. "But tonight, let's not talk about them." They ate pie in silence for a while, the kind of silence that carries more comfort than conversation. When Nina left, the cottage felt larger again, almost echoing. Lena walked out to the porch, mug of tea in hand, and stared at the moonlit waves. Her reflection shimmered in the glass door, a woman who had spent her life making spaces beautiful, only to be told there was no space left for her. Her phone buzzed once. A family group message lighting up the screen. So excited for Thanksgiving. Can't wait to see everyone at the estate. Everyone. Lena's thumb hovered over the message. Then she set the phone down, her expression unreadable. She looked back toward the sea, the sound of the tide steady and patient. Somewhere inside her, something quiet began to shift. Not anger, not yet, but the cold, deliberate focus of someone who's finally realized the room she was shut out of might soon belong to her. She whispered to the empty night, "We'll see about that." The following Monday, Lena sat at the small bistro table by her window, sorting through fabric swatches she'd promised to donate to a local design school. The light was gentle, the sea a muted silver beyond the dunes. She wasn't expecting company, which was why the quick knock startled her. When she opened the door, Eva Raines stood there, cheeks pink from the wind, curls pinned haphazardly, a stack of design magazines under one arm. "I was in the neighborhood," Eva said. "Thought you might want these for inspiration or distraction." Lena smiled faintly. Distraction might be the better choice today. Eva hesitated before setting the magazines down. "I ran into Lauren last week. She mentioned they booked the Charleston room for Thanksgiving again." The words landed like pebbles in still water. The Charleston room. Lena could picture every gilded cornice, every paneled wall. She had redesigned it herself, decades ago, when the Blakes were still a family unit instead of a collection of grudges. "They still use that place?" she asked quietly. Ava nodded. "Apparently, they call it their tradition. But I heard from a vendor friend that the owners are having a hard time keeping it afloat. Bookings are down. Maintenance costs up. It might even go up for sale next quarter." Lena's fingers paused over a swatch of blue silk. "For sale," she repeated, almost absently. "Yeah, the management company's been late paying their contractors." Eva shrugged. "It's a shame, though. That place has soul. Not many halls like it left." Lena set the swatch aside. "Do you know who handles their contracts?" "I can find out," Eva said, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "Do that," Lena replied softly. "If it's true, they'll need a buyer who actually cares about preserving its history." When Eva left, the house felt unusually charged, like the air before a storm. Lena sat back, her mind sifting through numbers and possibilities, the designer in her replaced by the strategist. That evening, she called Nina. "Tell me what you know about the Charleston room," she said as soon as Nina answered, "besides the fact that it's where your family pretends to be royalty every November." Nina's tone was dry. "I know the owners are in trouble. City records show 2 liens in the past year. They're bleeding money. Can a trust buy it quietly?" A pause. Then, "If we build it right, anonymous LLC through a private trustee, no one would trace it back to you." Lena looked out her window at the dusky horizon. "Drop the papers," she said. "I'll review them in the morning." "Lena," Nina said slowly, "what exactly are you planning?" Lena's voice was steady. "Just ensuring I have a seat next year." The next morning, her kitchen table transformed into an impromptu office. Manila folders, tax documents, Nina's discreetly worded emails. Lena signed each page with precise, graceful penmanship, her expression calm, but her pulse steady and sure. That afternoon, she drove into Savannah's historic district, parking across from the Charleston room. The old building stood proudly despite the peeling paint at its eaves and the ivy creeping too high. Through the tall windows she could see workers rearranging tables, the crystal chandeliers still sparkling even in mid-afternoon light. She watched for a long moment, memories flickering. Her laughter echoing in those same halls, her hand smoothing linen tablecloths, Mitchell at 10 running between tables with a paper turkey hat. She had given that place beauty once. Now she would give it purpose. Later that night, scrolling through her phone, she saw Lauren's latest post. A filtered photo of the estate's grand staircase decked in fall garlands. The caption read, "So grateful for our perfect family gathering this year. Tradition means everything. Perfect family." Lena stared at the words, then pressed her thumb against the screen and took a screenshot. A small, private smile curved her lips, cool and controlled, the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. She set the phone down and reached for her notebook. On the first blank page, she wrote one line in her neat designer's script: "Ownership is the highest form of invitation." She underlined it once, then closed the notebook. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the old windows of her cottage like whispered applause. Lena leaned back in her chair, that same calm resolve returning, the kind that comes when a woman who's been excluded remembers she once built the very rooms they take for granted. It started with a notification. Lena was sipping her morning coffee when her phone buzzed. A family group message, the one she never left but rarely contributed to. The screen lit with Lauren's name. "So excited for next year already. Caroline says the Charleston room is ours for as long as we want it. Tradition lives on. Shine family first." Beneath it, Caroline's reply appeared almost instantly. "Wouldn't be Thanksgiving without our Charleston room. No one does it quite like us." Mitchell's thumbs up followed, predictable as clockwork. Lena stared at the glowing screen, her reflection faint in the glass. Small, composed, unreadable. The irony was almost too sharp to taste. "Ours?" they said. She didn't reply. She simply archived the conversation and finished her coffee in silence. That evening, her phone buzzed again. This time, a different message appeared. Shorter, crueler, and clearly not meant for her. "Mitchell. Mom's probably sulking again. We can't keep catering to her guilt trips every year." Then a moment later, Mitchell. "Oh damn, wrong chat." Lena let the screen dim in her hand. She didn't text back. There was no need. Words were small currency compared to what she already owned. 2 nights later, she parked her car across from the Charleston room again. The air was damp and heavy with magnolia and rain. The building looked asleep, the faint glow of exit lights visible through the arched windows. She unlocked the side door with a key Nina had couriered that morning. Inside, the scent hit her first. Aged wood, brass polish, faint perfume from a wedding weeks past. The chandeliers were dark, their crystal teardrops catching only fragments of the streetlight. Lena stepped into the ballroom and stood dead center. Her heels clicked once against the floor, echoing off the high ceilings. This was where her family laughed without her, where they carved turkey and toasted each other's success. This was the room they claimed as their own. She looked around, taking in every detail: the worn velvet chairs, the scuffed molding, the dim sconce lights that buzzed faintly. The place had aged since she last designed it, like a once beautiful woman neglected by careless hands. Lena set her leather bag on a nearby table and unrolled a large sheet of tracing paper. Under the weak glow of her phone flashlight, she began sketching. New chair, layout. Better lighting grid. Replace carpeting with oak. A redesigned color palette. Warm neutrals, gold trim, silk drapery to frame the windows. It wasn't a renovation. It was reclamation. The next morning, Eva met her at the hall. She wore jeans and carried a measuring tape around her neck, eyes gleaming like a student back in her favorite class. "I can't believe you got access this fast," Eva whispered. "Ownership has its privileges," Lena said lightly. They walked the perimeter of the room together, their voices echoing against the empty space. Eva jotted measurements while Lena directed. "The lighting needs to be softer, not showy. Replace the old sconces with something understated. And the chairs, no gold paint. Walnut finish, real craftsmanship." Eva nodded. "Classic elegance with modern bones." Lena smiled. "Exactly." By dusk, Sketches and notes filled an entire folder. Orders were placed with vendors Eva trusted. Fabric samples arrived overnight. Even the florist who once decorated Savannah's governor's mansion agreed to consult. Under a different name, of course. Everything was moving quietly, efficiently, beneath notice. The last piece came from Nina. Late one night, she dropped an envelope on Lena's porch before heading home. Inside was a single page of legal text, the ink still smelling faintly fresh. Transfer of deed. Charleston Heritage Venue, LLC, Low Country Holdings Trust. Lena read it once, twice, then placed her signature in the designated space. Her hand didn't shake. When she sealed the envelope, she paused for a moment, listening to the surf outside. Through the window, the moonlight spilled across her drafting table, over blueprints, fabric, and the single phrase she'd written weeks ago in her notebook. Ownership is the highest form of invitation. She whispered it again under her breath, tasting the truth of it now. Her phone buzzed. Another post from Lauren, the caption chirpy and oblivious. Counting down the months till next Thanksgiving. Nothing compares to our family tradition at the Charleston Room. Lena smiled, a calm, knowing smile, and took another screenshot. Then she turned off her phone, folded her sketches, and whispered to the darkened cottage, "You'll find out what tradition really means." Caroline Blake had a voice that could fill a ballroom, even when it didn't need to. Lena heard it before she saw it. The sharp, performative laugh of someone who had spent her entire life curating the illusion of control. The video clip appeared on Facebook that morning, shared by a mutual acquaintance from Savannah's country club circle. Caroline stood in front of the Charleston Room, gesturing grandly to the building behind her as if she owned the bricks themselves. "It's official," she announced, smiling too wide for the camera. "We've already booked next year's Thanksgiving here at the Charleston Room. Family tradition continues. Same space, same love, same legacy." Lena's tea cooled on the counter as she watched it twice, then a third time, the faintest twitch forming at the corner of her mouth. Same legacy. She didn't share the post. She didn't comment. She simply texted Nina, "She's announcing bookings that don't exist. Check the paperwork." By evening, Nina had called in a favor from a clerk she knew in the venue registry office. The sound of her typing echoed faintly through the phone as Lena listened. "Here it is," Nina said finally. "Caroline submitted a reservation form 2 weeks ago under the Blake Family Trust. And it's based on a contract that expired last fiscal year. The new management system, your management system, doesn't recognize it. They never paid a new deposit, never re-signed the updated terms." Lena allowed herself a quiet exhale. "So, legally, they don't have the hall," Nina finished, satisfaction curling around her words. "You do." Lena smiled faintly. "Thank you, Nina. Keep a copy of that file somewhere safe." "Already done. You want me to tell them?" "No," Lena said, pouring herself a fresh cup of tea. "Let's give them time to celebrate their booking first." 2 days later, Lauren's voice chirped through the family group chat again. An image of polished oak tables and floral centerpieces, clearly pulled from last year's photos. "So excited to announce we've secured the Charleston Room again. Exclusive holiday dinner. Blake, family only." Heart emojis followed. A string of "can't wait" comments from Caroline and Mitchell's cousins. Lena read it from her phone while sitting on her porch, the waves rolling in their endless rhythm beyond the dunes. She forwarded the message to Nina with only 2 words. "They'll learn." No reply came back. Nina didn't need to answer. That same week, Lena's birthday arrived, quiet as the tide. She didn't make much of it anymore. She spent the morning rearranging sketches of the new Charleston Room layout, tracing her finger along the latest samples Eva had ordered. Walnut chairs with high backs, ivory linens with subtle embroidery, glassware that shimmered faintly like captured starlight. Around noon, her phone pinged once. A notification from a design magazine. Nothing personal. By 3, there was still no call from Mitchell. No message. Not even the obligatory, "Hope it's a great one, Mom." Lena stared at the empty screen for a long moment, the silence louder than any argument they'd ever had. Then she set the phone face down and walked to her drafting table. She opened a fresh sheet of paper and began sketching the new centerpiece layout. 10 tables forming a perfect circle under the ballroom's chandelier. No head table, no hierarchy. Every seat equal. Every voice seen. It wasn't just about design anymore. It was a manifesto. When the afternoon light turned amber, Ava dropped by with a box of fabric trims and a bakery cupcake. "Happy birthday," she said gently. "You okay?" Lena gave a small smile. "Better than I've been in years." Ava glanced at the rolled blueprints. "It's coming together fast." "It has to," Lena said. "They've already announced a party they can't host. It'll be poetic when they realize whose name is on the deed." Eva grinned. "Poetic and brutal." Lena looked back at the sketch. "No, just fair." That night, as the last light faded beyond the marshes, Lena opened her laptop and checked the new ownership dashboard Nina had set up. The confirmation glowed on her screen. Property, the Charleston Room. Registered owner, Low Country Holdings Trust. Authorized signatory, L. Blake. Her finger hovered over the mouse for a moment. Then she clicked, confirm. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere offshore, a low, distant promise of a storm not yet arrived. Lena closed the laptop, straightened her chair, and stared out at the restless water. Her reflection in the glass looked older, stronger, carved in quiet resolve. "Let them plan their perfect dinner," she murmured. "They're already sitting at my table." The Charleston room smelled of sawdust and promise. Lena stood in the center of the ballroom, sleeves rolled up, hair pulled into a neat twist, watching a line of delivery men carry in the new walnut chairs she'd ordered herself. Each one was solid, elegant, built to last longer than the memory of the people who'd once sat here believing it was theirs. "Set those along the west wall," she instructed. "We'll unbox the tables once the flooring's polished." Eva moved quickly beside her, clipboard in hand, eyes bright with the thrill of creation. "You realize you're about to make this place look better than it ever did in its prime?" "That's the point," Lena said, brushing a streak of dust from her cuff. "If you're going to reclaim a room, you don't whisper it. You do it beautifully." The chandeliers above were being rewired to cast a soft amber glow instead of the old, harsh white. New sconces, custom-made, waited in boxes near the door. Every element had Lena's touch. Quiet sophistication, not spectacle. She wanted warmth, not grandeur. Intention, not imitation. By the end of the week, the transformation was nearly complete. The Charleston room no longer looked like a relic of old family dinners. It looked alive again. The walls, repainted in a rich ivory tone, reflected candlelight like memory. The oak floors gleamed. Even the air seemed to hum differently, like a space aware of its second chance. Ava turned slowly in the middle of the ballroom. "It's strange. I've been in here a dozen times, but tonight, it feels like it knows it belongs to you." Lena smiled faintly. Places remember who cared for them. The catering team arrived the following morning. Not the kind that handled loud, boozy weddings, but the kind who spoke in low tones and measured their spices by instinct. Lena watched as the head chef walked through his setup, shaking her hand with quiet deference. "We're honored to be part of this, Ms. Blake," he said. "Please," she corrected gently, "call me Lena." When the tasting ended, perfect crab bisque, roasted duck with fig glaze, a dessert that melted like silk, Lena sat back in her chair, satisfied. "Send out the private invitations," she told Ava. "Keep the list small, 10 tables only. Ava raised an eyebrow. Anyone from the family? Not a soul, Lena replied. This isn't about revenge, it's about reclamation. Eva gave her a small, knowing smile. Sure, Lena. And I'm just here for the lighting. That night, the Charleston Room's official website updated quietly. No announcement, no press release, just a new tagline below its banner photo, under new ownership. A legacy reimagined. The next morning, Lauren noticed. At 8:47 a.m., she sent a flurry of texts to the family group chat. Does anyone know what's going on with the Charleston Room? Their site looks different. Trying to confirm our reservation, but it keeps saying unavailable. Then a screenshot followed. An auto-reply email that read, "Thank you for your inquiry. The Charleston Room is now booked exclusively through December. We are not accepting additional reservations at this time." Caroline's response came minutes later. "This must be a mistake. We've used that hall for 20 years. I'll handle it." By noon, Caroline was on the phone with the venue. Her voice, clipped and imperious, carried all the way to the back office where Eva now sat at her new desk, headset on, nameplate freshly engraved, Eva Raines, event director. "Charleston Room, this is Eva," she said smoothly. "This is Caroline Blake," the voice on the line snapped. "We're trying to confirm our annual Thanksgiving reservation. Your system's giving me some kind of error message." Eva's tone remained professional. "I see. May I have your booking reference?" "It's under the Blake Family Trust," Caroline said. "We've hosted there for years." "Surely you have it." Eva clicked through the screen that displayed nothing but Lena's authorized calendar. "I'm afraid I don't see any active contract under that name. The Charleston Room changed ownership last quarter. You may need to contact the new management." "New management?" Caroline repeated, incredulous. "Who the hell?" "I'm sorry, ma'am." Ava cut in gently. "That's all I can share." The silence on the other end lasted several beats before the line disconnected. Ava removed her headset and let out a quiet laugh. And so it begins. That evening, Lena returned to the Charleston Room with Nina. The renovations were finished. The chandeliers glowed like constellations above them, and the air held the faint scent of lemon polish and fresh paint. Lena walked the length of the ballroom, her hand brushing over each chair as if greeting an old friend. Nina trailed a few steps behind, hands in her coat pockets, watching her. "You really did it," Nina said softly. "They'll lose their minds when they find out." Lena turned, the candlelight catching her expression, calm, deliberate, gleaming with quiet satisfaction. "They already have," she said. "They just don't know it yet." They stood together for a long moment in the golden silence of the room. Then Nina reached into her coat and handed Lena a single envelope, the final signed deed, embossed and sealed. Lena didn't open it. She simply held it against her chest and looked around one last time. "This room was never theirs," she murmured. "It was only on loan." Outside, lightning flickered over the bay. The storm that had been building for weeks finally broke. The first heavy drops tapping against the tall windows like a slow, deliberate applause. Lena smiled, unshaken. "Let them come looking," she said. "They'll find the door locked, and their names missing from every seat." By the first week of spring, the Charleston Room was no longer a secret. Lauren made sure of that. Her new social media campaign launched on a Sunday morning, polished, pastel-toned, and aggressively sentimental. Under the banner "Generational Gatherings," where tradition meets legacy, she posted a reel of family photos over instrumental piano music. Caroline at the head of the table, Mitchell carving turkey, children laughing in soft focus. The caption read, "For 20 years, the Blakes have gathered at the Charleston Room to honor what matters most: family, gratitude, and continuity. Excited to keep the tradition alive this Thanksgiving." The hashtags, He cheeked family legacy, Hajj tradition lives on, spread faster than truth ever could. Within hours, hundreds of her followers had liked the post, flooding the comments with heart emojis and platitudes about Southern roots and the importance of keeping family close. Lena saw it over breakfast, the morning light sliding across her kitchen like honey. The sheer audacity of it made her smile. A dry, sharp curve that didn't touch her eyes. Nina arrived minutes later, phone in hand, still scrolling. "You've seen this?" she asked. Lena nodded. "Oh yes. A touching work of fiction." "They're branding themselves as the face of the Charleston room," Nina said. "She's using your space like a prop." "Then perhaps," Lena said evenly, stirring her coffee, "it's time the actual owner made herself known." That afternoon, a short, elegant press release went out through the Charleston Room's official channels. Nothing dramatic, nothing overt. The Charleston Room proudly announces its new ownership under the Low Country Holdings Trust. Under new direction, the venue is dedicated to community-focused events and inclusive celebrations that honor gratitude in all its forms. Attached was a professional photograph of the newly renovated ballroom. Gleaming chandeliers, symmetrical tables, every line deliberate and precise. No mention of the Blakes, no hint of personal motivation, just a quiet reclamation of truth. By Monday morning, Lauren's followers began to ask questions. Wait, new ownership? Does this mean you guys aren't hosting there anymore? Is this your family's venue or not? The comments multiplied under her original post until she turned them off entirely, but screenshots traveled faster than deletion. Caroline's fury arrived next. At 7:12 a.m., the family group chat lit up with a string of messages written in Caroline's familiar clipped phrasing. "Lauren, take that nonsense offline. You've embarrassed this family. No one outside needs to know about our business." Then, a final one addressed directly to Lena. "I don't know what game you're playing, but if you think you can humiliate us publicly, you're mistaken." Lena read it twice, sipping her tea. She didn't respond. Instead, she forwarded the entire message thread to Nina with a single line. "Document everything." That afternoon, Mitchell's name flashed across her phone, the first call in months. She let it ring until it stopped. When he tried again, she muted it. A third time, she silenced the screen completely. He left a voicemail. "Mom, this is ridiculous," he said, voice tight with barely checked frustration. "We just need to talk. Whatever this is, you're making it worse. You're making us look bad." Lena deleted the message without listening to the rest. She walked into her studio and pulled open the curtains. Sunlight spilled across the new fabric samples she and Eva had chosen. Muted golds, ivory, the palette of dignity. On her drafting board lay a framed rendering of the Charleston Room's final floor plan, perfect down to the inch. She traced one fingertip over the central chandelier, then whispered, "You made yourselves look bad long before I ever stepped in." By evening, Nina had sent out cease and desist letters, clean, clinical, and devastatingly effective. The subject line read, "Unauthorized use of venue name and imagery, immediate action required." Each letter bore the Charleston Room's letterhead and a simple signature, "Low Country Holdings Trust by Counsel." Lauren received hers first. Caroline's came an hour later. Mitchell's, through his office assistant. That night, the family chat went silent. The next morning, Lena drove to the Charleston Room for her final walkthrough before a booked charity gala. As she stepped inside, she paused to breathe in the familiar scent of polish and candle wax. Eva met her near the grand entryway, phone in hand, unable to hide a grin. "They've all gone quiet," Eva said. "Lauren's account is private now." Lena looked around the glittering ballroom, sunlight pouring through the tall windows like forgiveness she didn't need. "Good," she said softly. Let them sit in the silence they built. Ava studied her. You don't even look angry. I'm not, Lena replied. Anger is loud. Justice whispers. She began walking toward the main doors, heels echoing through the hall. Outside, the magnolia trees rustled, their petals drifting like pale confetti in the wind. As she reached for the handle, her phone buzzed once, an email notification from the venue's inbox. The subject line read, Thanksgiving booking inquiry. Blake Family Trust. Lena's lips curved. She didn't open it. The cafe sat on a quiet corner of Bay Street, the kind of place that smelled of roasted beans and rain-soaked brick. The morning crowd murmured softly, the hum of espresso machines rising like static. Lena chose a table near the window, far enough from the door to see them coming, close enough to leave without hesitation. She stirred her coffee slowly, watching condensation slide down the glass. She hadn't agreed to this meeting out of curiosity or hope. It was closure. Controlled. Deliberate. The bell over the door jingled. Mitchell entered first, his tie too tight, his smile thinner than the creases around his eyes. Lauren followed, immaculate as ever, oversized sunglasses hiding what she must have thought passed for remorse. Mom, Mitchell said, forcing warmth into the word. Lena, Lauren echoed, offering a brittle smile. Lena gestured to the seats across from her. Please. They sat. No one spoke for a long moment. The waitress approached, but Mitchell waved her off. He wasn't here to linger. So, he began, fingers steepled, tone clipped. We wanted to clear the air. Lena raised an eyebrow. The air seems fine to me. Lauren leaned forward, lowering her voice as if they were conspiring. We just think there's been a misunderstanding about the Charleston room. Lena's mouth curved slightly. A misunderstanding? Yes, Mitchell said quickly. The venue's always been part of our family tradition. It doesn't make sense for someone else to own it, especially... He caught himself, too late. Lena tilted her head. Especially what, Mitchell? He exhaled. Especially you, Mom. You don't even host Thanksgiving anymore. It's about continuity, not punishment. Lauren nodded, pressing a manicured hand over her husband's. Exactly. The optics have gotten complicated. People are talking. If you could just transfer the property back under the Blake Family Trust, it would settle everything. Lena took a sip of her coffee, calm as glass. Settle everything, she repeated. Interesting choice of words. Tell me, Lauren, when you say family, do you mean the same one that uninvited me from my own holiday table? Lauren's voice faltered. That was an oversight? Lena interrupted. An accident? Or was it when you said immediate family only that I misheard you? Mitchell leaned back, jaw tightening. You can't hold a grudge forever. Lena smiled. Who said this was a grudge? He rubbed his temple. Then what is it, Mom? What do you even want? Lena set her cup down carefully, letting the sound punctuate the silence. I want you to understand that this isn't yours anymore. The Charleston room belongs to me. It has for months. Lauren blinked. You bought it? In full, Lena said simply. Every tile, every chair, every chandelier, paid off and registered. Low Country Holdings Trust. My trust. You might have noticed the new name on the letterhead. Mitchell stared at her, stunned into stillness. You did this just to hurt us. Lena's eyes softened, not with pity, but with precision. No, she said quietly. I did it to remind you who I am. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The cafe's low hum filled the silence again, the hiss of milk frothing, a spoon clinking in the distance, the heartbeat rhythm of ordinary life continuing just outside their carefully curated drama. Lauren tried to recover. Her voice went high, fragile. We can fix this. We can work something out. Maybe a shared agreement? Or a family lease? You don't have to. Lauren, Lena cut in, tone gentle but unyielding. You mistake me for someone asking permission. Lauren blinked rapidly, the performance beginning. Her voice trembled just enough to attract attention from nearby tables. I'm just trying to keep the family together, she whispered, lowering her sunglasses to reveal perfectly timed tears. It was a polished act, but Lena had seen better performances. In mirrors, in boardrooms, in her son's voice when he used words like duty and care to mask indifference. Lena rose slowly, collecting her bag. You'll forgive me if I don't believe in performances anymore? Mom. Wait, Mitchell said, half standing. You can't just walk away from us like this. She looked at him, eyes clear, steady. You walked away years ago, Mitchell. I'm just closing the door you left open. Then she turned and walked out. The bell over the door jingled again as she stepped into the late morning light. The air outside was cooler, sharper, and the river beyond Bay Street glimmered like polished glass. Behind her, voices rose, Lauren's muffled sobs, Mitchell's frustrated hiss, but they faded quickly against the wind. Lena paused on the sidewalk, pulled her phone from her bag and typed a brief message to Nina. It's done. They finally asked for mercy. I declined. She slipped the phone away, straightened her coat, and started toward the parking lot. As she reached her car, her reflection in the window looked calm, untouchable. But beneath that stillness flickered something deeper, a glint of satisfaction wrapped in peace. The family had mistaken her silence for surrender. Now they were learning silence could roar. By mid-October, Savannah had turned gold, the air crisp, the river slow, the magnolias shedding their leaves like sighs. Lena's mornings were quiet, spent walking the beach and checking the Charleston Room's event calendar, which was already filled for the holidays. The Thanksgiving slot, however, remained blank by design, her design. Until that week, when the lies began again. Lauren's social media came alive, all filters and faux sincerity. Back at the Charleston Room this year, so thankful for family traditions that never fade. The post featured an old photo of the ballroom, one Lena had taken years ago when the walls still bore her design choices. Then came the physical proof. A crisp ivory envelope arrived in Lena's mailbox, sealed with gold foil and Caroline's impeccable handwriting. Inside, an engraved invitation, the Blake family Thanksgiving dinner. The Charleston Room, Historic District, Thursday, November 23rd, 5 p.m. Lena's laugh was soft, incredulous. She traced the embossed lettering with one manicured fingertip. They were still pretending so hard they'd printed it in ink. She set the invitation beside her coffee cup, snapped a photo of it, and forwarded it to Nina. Lena, they're holding an event they don't own. Nina, you want me to shut it down? Lena, no. Let's give them something real to attend. That afternoon, Lena met Eva at the Charleston Room. Sunlight poured through the windows, turning the ballroom floors into a sheet of burnished gold. Lena walked to the center of the room, heels echoing lightly against the wood. I think it's time, she said. Eva looked up from her notes. Time for what? For Thanksgiving, Lena replied. A new one. They spent hours planning. The idea was simple, radical in its warmth, a Thanksgiving of gratitude, open to Savannah's foster families, first responders, teachers, and local heroes. A dinner that celebrated belonging, not bloodlines. Eva grinned as she took notes. You really want to open it to the public? Not the public, Lena said, eyes thoughtful. Just the people who never got an invitation. By the next morning, flyers were designed, minimalist, elegant, the Charleston Room's logo gleaming in gold. Nina handled the logistics with surgical precision, ensuring every clause of the contract was watertight. Exclusive use of venue. Thursday, November 23rd. No subletting, no transfer of rights, no external bookings without prior written consent. The signature at the bottom, L. Blake. 2 days later, Caroline's call came through Nina's office line. The message was brief and brittle. There's been some confusion about our Thanksgiving reservation. We've used this venue for 2 decades. I expect to resolve this immediately. Nina, ever the strategist, responded with professional calm. There's no confusion, Mrs. Blake. The Charleston room is fully booked that evening, for a private community event. A pause. Then Caroline's clipped tone. By whom? Nina smiled into the receiver. By the owner. She hung up before Caroline could reply. By the following week, local news had caught wind of the whispers. A lifestyle reporter from Savannah Today reached out to Lena directly, requesting a comment about rumors of a family dispute over venue ownership. Lena met the journalist at the Charleston room, the ballroom glowing behind her like a cathedral of light. There's no dispute, she said evenly. The Charleston room is under new management, mine. We're simply redefining what tradition means. Gratitude shouldn't be exclusive. The article ran that Sunday. A new Thanksgiving. Designer Lena Blake opens historic venue for a community celebration. Photos of Lena walking through the renovated space accompanied the piece. Her posture was straight, her expression serene, her eyes quietly daring anyone to challenge her claim. That night, Lauren's private group chat, screenshotted by one of her friends, made its way to Lena's inbox via an anonymous sender. Lauren. She's lost it. We'll just show up. They wouldn't turn us away. Caroline. We'll see who looks foolish in the end. Lena forwarded it to Nina. Lena. Prepare for guests who weren't invited. Nina. I'll be ready. A week later, Lena stood on the Charleston room's balcony as workers hung the final garlands of ivy and soft golden light. Below, tables gleamed with linen and crystal, waiting for people who'd never expected such a seat. Ava stepped up beside her, a clipboard tucked under her arm. You think they'll actually try to crash it? Lena's gaze drifted toward the street below, where the city lights shimmered on wet pavement. Oh, I'm counting on it. Her reflection in the glass door smiled, calm, composed, dangerous in its stillness. It started with a banner. The Charleston room's event calendar updated quietly one Wednesday morning. A simple, polished graphic posted to the venue's official social media page. In gold serif letters against a cream background, it read, Thanksgiving of Gratitude hosted by Lena Blake. An evening honoring Savannah's first responders, teachers, and foster families. Within minutes, the image spread. Local influencers reposted it, tagging charities and community groups. The venue's inbox filled with RSVP requests and messages of support. And by noon, Lauren's carefully maintained illusion cracked wide open. Her latest Instagram story, showing an old Charleston room table setting captioned, "Can't wait for our annual family dinner," was suddenly flooded with comments. Wait, isn't the venue already booked for a public event? You sure about that? Looks like it's under new management. Yikes. This didn't age well. Lauren deleted the post within an hour. But the damage, as always, was faster than deletion. Caroline called Mitchell first. Her voice was brittle, sharp as glass. Do you have any idea what's being said online? That woman has turned the Charleston room into some kind of charity event. Mitchell was at work, the blinds drawn against the afternoon glare. I'm sure it's temporary, Aunt Caroline. A scheduling mix-up. There is no mix-up, she snapped. The venue has her name all over it. Do you know what this makes us look like? Fools, pretending to own something we don't. Mitchell rubbed his temple, exhaustion creeping into his voice. I'll handle it. He didn't. By evening, Caroline had sent out a mass email to the extended family. Given recent developments, the Thanksgiving dinner is canceled until further notice. Lauren, humiliated, posted a cryptic message on her private page hours later. Some people will do anything for attention, even weaponize kindness. It took less than 10 minutes for Lena's name to start appearing in the comments. Lena didn't read any of it. She was too busy preparing for the walkthrough. The Charleston room glowed under the soft haze of late-afternoon sunlight. Every table was perfectly set. White china, crystal stemware, candles catching gold reflections in the mirrors. The room felt alive, humming with quiet anticipation. Eva moved briskly between the tables, clipboard in hand. "The caterer confirmed the final menu," she said. "Turkey roulade, roasted vegetables, pumpkin tartlets. Simple, elegant." "Perfect," Lena said. "This isn't a gala, it's gratitude." When the first group of guests arrived, local foster coordinators, 2 retired firefighters, and a kindergarten teacher whose eyes welled up just stepping inside, the transformation became real. "Ms. Blake," the teacher said softly, "I've lived here 30 years and never once thought I'd set foot in this place. It's beautiful." Lena smiled. "You belong here as much as anyone ever did." Eva caught the moment from across the room, eyes shining. "You're really doing it," she whispered. The next morning, the first email arrived. Subject: Donation for the foster program. "Dear Ms. Blake, your story reached me through Savannah today. Years ago you redesigned my family home. You probably don't remember me, but your kindness never left us. Please accept this $10,000 donation in your name to support the foster families attending your Thanksgiving event." Warmly, Marjorie Hale Lena read the email twice, emotion catching her unexpectedly. She forwarded it to Nina with a note. "People remember real gratitude," Nina replied, "and they never forget who taught them how to build it." By Thursday, Savannah Living reached out requesting an exclusive feature. "We'd love to profile you and the Charleston Room's new mission. It's the perfect local story for our holiday issue, redefining tradition in the South." Lena hesitated, then agreed. She knew visibility would sting her family more than silence ever could, but that wasn't the point. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about legacy. The photographer arrived that afternoon, capturing Lena and Eva standing in the center of the ballroom. The chandeliers glowed behind them, their reflections shimmering across polished oak. "Could you look toward the window?" the photographer asked. "Beautiful light there." Lena turned, the sunlight outlining her profile in gold. Behind her, the doors stood open, the faint hum of the city drifting in. She could almost hear her family's voices from a distance: Lauren's brittle outrage, Caroline's disbelief, Mitchell's quiet resentment. But it was faint now, almost like the echo of a storm long past. "Perfect," the photographer said. "You look right at home." Lena smiled. But it wasn't for the camera. It was for the room itself, the space she'd rebuilt not out of vengeance, but remembrance. She reached out, running her hand along the back of one of the new chairs, tracing the wood grain she'd chosen herself. "This was always meant to be more than theirs," she said softly. "It just took me this long to take it back." Eva came up beside her. "The article's going to light Savannah on fire." Lena's eyes glimmered. "Then let it burn." Outside, the sun dipped low over the city, its reflection setting the river ablaze in light. The bridge across the water glowed the same molten gold as the chandeliers above them. Brilliant, unreachable, and irrevocably crossed. The storm came early that week, rolling in from the Atlantic with sheets of rain that blurred the horizon into a wash of silver. By dusk, Lena's beach cottage was wrapped in the hush of weather, waves pounding the shore, wind pressing at the windows like an uninvited guest. She stood at her kitchen counter, arranging flowers for the Charleston Room's Thanksgiving dinner: white roses, gold-tipped eucalyptus, a few stems of autumn fern. Each stem found its place under her careful hand. The rhythm of it steadied her. A knock broke the quiet. 3 sharp raps, then one hesitant one. Lena glanced at the clock. 8:12 p.m. Too late for deliveries. Too deliberate for the wind. When she opened the door, Mitchell stood on the porch, rainwater dripping from his coat collar, eyes hollow with something she hadn't seen in him for years. Uncertainty. "Mom," he said softly. Lena didn't move aside. "You should have called." "I did," he said, glancing down. "You didn't answer." She studied him for a long moment before stepping back. "Then say what you came to say." He entered quietly, leaving a trail of damp footprints across the wood floor. The cottage smelled of coffee and rain, of warmth he didn't seem to know what to do with. "Nice place," he murmured, looking around. "It feels smaller than I remember." "It's not the place that shrank," she said evenly. He winced, the words landing where they needed to. Lena returned to the kitchen, continuing to trim the stems as he stood awkwardly near the doorway. For the first time, Mitchell looked less like a man in control and more like a boy again. Lost, cornered by the weight of what he'd done. "Lauren doesn't know I'm here," he said finally. Well, she's still angry, but I needed to come myself." Lena didn't look up. "And why's that?" "Because I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "For all of it. For the way we treated you. For Thanksgiving. For pretending it didn't matter." She kept her hands busy, arranging flowers that didn't need arranging. "Pretending it didn't matter was easier for you." "Yes." His voice cracked. "And it was wrong." Lena looked up then, her eyes calm but piercing. "Do you know what hurt most, Mitchell? It wasn't being left out of a dinner. It was realizing I raised a son who thought tradition meant ownership instead of gratitude." He opened his mouth, but no defense came. Only rain on the roof, steady and relentless. "I didn't know how far it had gone," he said. "The posts, the invitations. I thought we'd just patch it over. But when I saw your event, what you did with that space, it made me realize how wrong we were. You made it something real again." Lena's hands stilled. For the first time, his voice carried no arrogance, no pretense. Just quiet regret. He took a breath, meeting her eyes. "I want to come this year. Just me. No Lauren. No speeches. I'll sit wherever there's room." The knife in her hand tapped once against the cutting board. The sound was soft, but final. "You made your table," she said quietly. "Sit at it." Mitchell flinched as if struck. "Mom, please." "I'm not angry," she said, her tone even. "Truly. I'm past that. But forgiveness doesn't mean return. You taught me that every time you chose silence over honesty." He looked at her, searching for a softness that wasn't there anymore. There was only grace now. And grace was far more unforgiving. She turned back to the flowers, rearranging one last rose until it stood perfectly upright. "You have a family, Mitchell. Go be thankful with them. I already have mine." He stood there another moment, shoulders sagging, eyes shining with something that might have been tears, or just the reflection of the storm. Then he nodded once. "I really am sorry," he said. "I know," she replied, still not looking at him. He turned and left. The door closed gently behind him. From the kitchen window, Lena watched as he walked down the rain-slicked path toward his car, his figure blurring into shadow under the streetlight. Nina stepped into the room, coffee mug in hand. "You let him in?" Lena nodded once. For a moment. Nina joined her at the window, watching the headlights fade into the dark. "He's gone." "Not gone," Lena said softly. "Just finally outside where he belongs." The wind rattled the panes, but inside, the air was still, steady. resolved. Lena adjusted the last flower in the vase, the faintest smile touching her lips. "Now," she murmured, "we can set the real table." Thanksgiving morning broke clear and gold, the kind of Savannah day that felt too bright to belong to November. The air carried a hint of sea salt and wood smoke, the world freshly rinsed after last night's storm. Lena arrived at the Charleston room just after sunrise. The building gleamed under the early light, every pane of glass polished to a mirror shine. Inside, the scent of cinnamon and roasted pecans drifted through the corridors, mingling with the hum of last-minute preparations. Eva was already there, sleeves rolled up, a clipboard tucked under her arm, hair pulled back in a loose bun. "We're almost ready," she said, voice clipped but excited. "Catering's plating the first course. Volunteers are setting out the name cards, and the choir's doing sound check." Lena smiled faintly. "And the chairs?" "Exactly where you wanted them. 10 perfect circles. No head table." "Good," Lena said, smoothing the edge of the linen at the nearest setting. "Everyone deserves to be seen." She stepped back and took in the sight. The ballroom was alive now. Candles flickered in crystal holders, soft music spilled from hidden speakers, and the scent of rosemary and butter floated like a quiet invitation. The chandeliers caught the sunlight from the tall windows, scattering it in golden fragments across the tables. Eva touched her arm gently. "You did this." Lena's voice was soft, almost private. "We did this." By noon, the guests began to arrive. A fire crew from Chatham County, uniforms pressed, hands rough and grateful. 2 teachers who'd taught 3 generations of local children. Foster parents with their small, wide-eyed kids clutching paper crafts shaped like turkeys. Nurses from the county clinic, a mail carrier who'd been delivering through hurricanes for 20 years. Each one stepped through the doors hesitant at first, then warm with wonder. "Welcome," Lena said to every face, shaking hands, offering smiles, meaning each word. "You belong here. Dinner starts at 5, but the joy starts now." Eva flitted between tables, organizing volunteers with practiced precision. "Table 4 needs pitchers of cider," she called to the servers, "and someone tell the musicians we're starting Prelude in 10. Lena moved gracefully among the guests, answering questions, accepting hugs, steady in her calm. She felt no nerves, only the profound stillness that comes when something long overdue has finally arrived. Nina appeared by the bar, impeccably dressed in dark green silk, a glass of cider in her hand, and the kind of expression that held pride disguised as professionalism. "Do you see them?" Nina asked quietly as Lena joined her. "Every seat filled, not one left empty." Lena looked out across the ballroom. Children's laughter rippled between tables. A firefighter held a foster toddler on his knee. The teacher from East Broad Elementary was sharing a story with the clinic nurses. It was noisy, imperfect, human, exactly as she'd imagined. "Yes," Lena said. "They're finally sitting at the table that was meant for them." As the main course was served, Ava dimmed the lights slightly and the golden glow deepened. Nina rose from her chair, glass raised. The room quieted. "I'd like to make a toast," she said, "to Lena Blake, who saw not who should sit, but who deserved to the woman who turned exclusion into invitation." Applause swelled. Lena's hand pressed against her heart, overwhelmed, but she rose anyway. "Thank you, Nina," she said softly. "But this night isn't about me. It's about gratitude, the kind that doesn't wait for permission." Her voice carried easily across the room. Every head turned, every conversation paused. "When I was young," she continued, "I thought belonging was something someone else could give you. A seat, a title, a gesture. But the truth is, belonging isn't a gift. It's something you build piece by piece until you've made enough space for others to join you. She let that hang in the air a moment. Tonight, this table belongs to everyone who showed up, even when they weren't invited. Eva's eyes shone. Nina raised her glass again. To earned places, she said quietly. To earned places, the crowd echoed, a chorus of warmth that filled the hall like music. Lena sat again, tears pricking her eyes. Around her, laughter rose, the sound of community unafraid of its own noise. And yet, just for a second, her gaze drifted toward the front entrance, where the faintest movement caught her eye through the glass. A figure in the shadows, standing perfectly still, watching. Mitchell. He didn't step inside. He just stood there, raincoat buttoned, hands in his pockets, face unreadable. Lena held his gaze through the glass until a foster child tugged at her sleeve, asking if she'd come meet the choir. When she turned back, the doorway was empty. Only the reflection of the ballroom lights remained, shimmering like constellations across the darkened street. The morning after Thanksgiving broke quiet and bright. The sky over Savannah was a pale, forgiving blue, and the tide had left the sand smooth, untouched. Lena sat at her kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, scrolling through the morning news on her tablet. Halfway down the homepage of Savannah Today, she froze. There, beneath a bold headline, "A different kind of Thanksgiving, designer Lena Blake opens doors to the city's unsung heroes," was a photo that caught her breath. It showed the Charleston room in full bloom, candles glowing, children laughing, firefighters lifting glasses of cider, and Lena herself at the center, smiling in a way she hadn't in years. The caption read, "An evening of gratitude, grace, and the quiet rebuilding of what family means." Lena let out a long, unguarded exhale. For a moment, she simply stared, the faint reflection of the screen flickering in her eyes. The comment section was flooded. Not with gossip or speculation, but with warmth. This is what community looks like. In a world full of noise, this feels like peace. We need more Lenas. Across social media, the photos spread. The ballroom's golden light, the circle of tables, the laughter of guests who looked genuinely seen. Thanksgiving of gratitude began trending locally before noon. Eva texted her a link. "Eva, you've broken the internet in the nicest possible way." Lena, "I'll take it. One quiet storm at a time." By afternoon, the Charleston Room's voicemail was overflowing with messages, people asking to volunteer next year, to donate, to sponsor families. Nina's paralegal forwarded Lena an email from a charity board member requesting to form a lasting partnership. And then there was the message that mattered most. It came from a woman named Janet Ellis, subject line simple. "Your story made me cry. Dear Ms. Blake, I watched the news coverage of your Thanksgiving event last night. I don't know you, but I wanted to thank you. My husband and I lost our only child 2 years ago. Holidays have been impossible since then. But seeing what you did, seeing strangers treated like family, it reminded me that maybe there's still space for kindness in the world. You gave me hope, and that's something I hadn't felt in a long time. With love." Janet E. Lena read it twice, then set the tablet down gently. The letter made her chest ache. The good kind. The one that comes when something once broken begins to heal. She turned toward the mantel where a few framed photos rested. Her younger self beside a much smaller Mitchell, laughing in front of that same Charleston room. She picked it up, studied it for a long while, and whispered, "I finally set the right table." By evening, the ripple had turned into a wave. Savannah Living ran a follow-up feature. Local influencers reposted the article with captions like "Redefining Southern Tradition" and "Elegance with Heart." Meanwhile, Caroline's name had started trending for all the wrong reasons. Someone online had unearthed her old posts bragging about exclusive family events at the Charleston Room. The comments were merciless. Exclusive? Turns out the only one excluded was the woman who built it. Poetic justice. Served warm. Within a day, Caroline's social media accounts vanished, her Facebook page redirected to a no longer available screen. Lauren, ever the influencer, tried to pivot. A half-hearted post appeared on her feed. So happy others could enjoy the Charleston Room this year. Gratitude is for everyone. But even her followers weren't buying it. The replies were ice cold. Funny how gratitude showed up right after public embarrassment. Lena didn't reply, didn't share, didn't comment. She simply watched the tide of public opinion do what it always did: sweep through, wash over, move on. That night, the Charleston Room was quiet again. Lena had stopped by after dinner to help Eva and Nina with cleanup, though most of the work was already done. The ballroom smelled faintly of candle wax and roasted herbs. On the main table, one menu from the evening remained, slightly wrinkled from a spill of cider. Lena picked it up and smiled at the date printed at the top. November 23rd. "Keep it," Nina said from behind her. "Frame it. Proof that you won." Lena shook her head softly. "No, proof that I stopped playing." But she did frame it later, alongside a black and white group photo from the night before. The firefighters, the teachers, the foster kids, and her, smiling through the chaos of it all. She hung them side by side on the wall above her drafting table. As she stepped back to look at them, her phone buzzed once on the counter. A text from an unsaved number. "Saw the article. You looked happy. Glad it worked out. M." No punctuation beyond that. No apology either. Lena read it once, then powered off the phone. The glow disappeared, leaving only the quiet hum of the sea outside. She looked at the framed photo again, at the circle of tables glowing with light, at the laughter captured mid-breath. For the first time in a long time, she realized this table had meant something, and not just to her. The first chill of December swept through Savannah, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and rain. The city had begun to dress for the holidays, wreaths in shop windows, string lights along the waterfront. But Lena moved through it quietly, unhurried, as though she were watching a play she no longer needed to perform in. She sat in her attorney's office that morning, sunlight falling through high windows onto polished wood. The pen in her hand felt heavy, deliberate. Nina stood nearby, glasses low on her nose, scanning the final page of the document with the focus of someone closing a circle that had been open too long. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Nina asked softly. Lena signed her name in a neat, precise line. "I've never been sure of anything." The ink glistened briefly before it dried. On the first page, her instructions were clear. Mitchell Blake and Lauren Blake, excluded from all inheritance. No trust funds, no property, no secondary rights. Everything Lena owned, the cottage, her savings, the Charleston Room, was to be transferred to a newly formed nonprofit foundation, the Charleston Trust for Community Arts and Fellowship. Eva Raines, Executive Director. Nina Hall, Legal Trustee. "Now it belongs to the city," Lena said quietly. "To the people who need it. No one can buy it, no one can sell it, and no one can twist it into a weapon again." Nina looked at her over the top of her glasses. "You realize this is permanent?" "That's the point," Lena said. That afternoon, she walked alone through the Charleston Room. The winter light filtered through the tall windows, softer now, almost blue. The scent of lemon polish lingered in the air, mingling with the faint trace of last month's festivities: wax, pine, roasted herbs. The room was empty, but not silent. It seemed to hum with memory, She passed the tables where firefighters had laughed with teachers, where children had colored paper leaves, where the old nurse had cried during the toast. She ran her hand along the back of one chair, the wood smooth beneath her palm, solid and real. In the far corner, near the entrance, hung a new frame she hadn't approved, but immediately understood. Ava's doing. It was the photo from Thanksgiving night. Lena at the center, guests around her, light caught in every smiling face. Beneath it, a small brass plate read, "Gratitude is not an inheritance, it's a choice." Lena smiled. "She gets it," she murmured. Ava appeared a few moments later carrying a folder. "Paperwork's done," she said. "The trust is active. You're officially the founder." Lena chuckled softly. "Founder. I like that better than forgotten." Ava's expression softened. "They won't like it, you know." "They don't have to," Lena replied. "I didn't build this for them." They walked together toward the main ballroom, the echo of their footsteps mingling with the whisper of wind through the eaves. The chandeliers hung above them like frozen stars, steady and unflinching. At the far end, Nina was waiting, a bottle of champagne already open on the nearest table. "Thought we'd make it official," she said, pouring 3 glasses. "To new beginnings. Or, in this case, rightful endings." Eva laughed softly. "I'll drink to that." They clinked glasses, the sound sharp and bright in the vast room. "To Lena," Nina said, lifting hers higher. "You didn't just take a seat, you changed the table." Lena blinked once, eyes glistening, and looked around at the room she'd reclaimed from ghosts and arrogance and bloodline. "I just said it the way it should have been all along." They drank. The silence after the toast thick with the kind of peace that follows a long war finally won. Later, after Ava and Nina left, Lena stayed behind. The lights were dim now, the room lit only by the street lamps outside and the shimmer of the chandeliers. She walked to the photo once more, fingertips brushing the edge of the frame. For a long moment she let herself feel the full gravity of it, how something as simple as a chair, a table, a meal, could become a declaration of identity. How the very thing that had once excluded her had become her way of letting others in. She turned toward the doors and looked out at the night, the streets slick from recent rain. Her reflection floated in the glass, layered over the ballroom behind her. From her purse, she took a single key, engraved in gold, L. Blake. She turned it over in her hand once, then slipped it into the envelope labeled Trust Property, for director use only. She placed the envelope on the reception desk. The sound of the latch locking echoed faintly as she closed the doors. Outside, the cold air bit her cheeks, the city lights glimmering like candle flames in the distance. She paused at the top of the steps and looked back. Through the tall windows, the framed photo caught the glow from a passing car. Lena, frozen mid-laugh, surrounded by the family she had built for herself. Her family. She smiled once more, quietly, resolutely, and whispered into the wind. "Now it's theirs." Then she turned and walked down the steps, her footsteps slow, steady, final. Behind her, the Charleston room stood silent and illuminated, its chandeliers glowing like a cathedral's promise, untouchable, eternal, and finally free. By February, the Charleston room had found its rhythm again. The winter light spilled through its tall windows, glancing off polished wood and gilded frames. But this time, it wasn't for society galas or private luncheons. The tables were covered in folders, laptops, and mugs of coffee. 30 volunteers sat in a loose circle, notebooks open, energy buzzing like spring thunder. Lena stood near the head of the room, not as hostess or matriarch, but as founder. The new Charleston Trust for Community Arts and Fellowship was holding its first planning session for next year's Thanksgiving of Gratitude. Eva was at the front, sleeves rolled up, the same spark in her eyes that once came alive during design consultations. "So," she said, flipping to a slide on her laptop. We're already at capacity for next year. But I have an idea to make it more than just a dinner. The group leaned in. Scholarships, Ava continued. Small grants for local students. Kids aging out of foster care or coming from low-income homes. We could call it the Table Fund. You know, continuing the idea that everyone deserves a seat. A ripple of quiet admiration moved through the group. Lena smiled. Brilliant, she said. Practical, meaningful, and sustainable. Make sure it's written into the annual charter. Eva nodded. Already on it. Across the room, Nina typed a note on her tablet. We've had 3 local businesses reach out already, she said. A catering company wants to donate services, a design firm's offering decor, and the Savannah Historical Society wants to partner for preservation funding. Lena looked around at the faces, young and old, local teachers, small business owners, a few familiar ones from the last dinner. Then this is what it's becoming, she said softly. Not an event. A tradition. The volunteers smiled, a murmur of agreement moving through the room. But even as she spoke, Lena knew the irony. Some traditions had to be rebuilt from ashes. 2 weeks later, a plain white envelope arrived at her cottage. Her name was written in careful, almost hesitant handwriting. From Mitchell. No return address, no email follow-up. Just paper, ink, weight, and the past. She turned it over in her hands, feeling the faint press of his writing through the page. Nina, who'd stopped by for coffee, watched her quietly from across the table. Going to read it? Nina asked. Lena shook her head. He had years to say what he needed to say. If he's writing now, it's for himself. Not for me. She slid the envelope back into its wrapper, sealed it with a strip of tape, and scribbled, "Return to sender" across the front. Nina gave a slow nod. Closure doesn't always need conversation? Lena smiled faintly. No. Sometimes it just needs silence. The letter went out with the morning mail. That same week, Lauren's voice found its way online again. On her still active social media account, she posted a single tweet. Imagine being canceled by your own mother-in-law. Some people build empires just to prove a point. It was liked by fewer than a dozen people, mostly distant acquaintances, a few bots, and one cousin who'd already deleted the comment the next morning. Underneath, someone replied, "Or maybe she just built something you never earned." The tweet disappeared within hours. Lena saw none of it. By then, she'd already deactivated her accounts. No final post, no announcement, just silence, digital and otherwise. Social media runs on performance, she'd told Eva earlier that week, and I'm finished performing. Now her world was made of real things, the hum of volunteers drafting plans, the smell of coffee in the Charleston room, the sound of Eva laughing with interns in the hall. March arrived with soft rains and a sense of renewal. One evening, Lena stayed late after a planning session, walking the perimeter of the Charleston room as the last volunteers filed out. The air was full of faint echoes, the scrape of chairs, the rustle of paper, the warm murmur of purpose. Eva came to her side, clutching a folder of notes. Next year's going to be big, she said. I can feel it. Lena smiled, her reflection ghosting faintly in the tall windows. That's the goal. Not bigger, though. Deeper. Eva nodded, thoughtful. You think your family will ever show up? To one of these? Lena's eyes softened. They already did. They just didn't recognize themselves in the crowd. She glanced toward the framed photo on the far wall, the same one that had hung there since Thanksgiving. The brass plate below it gleamed under the lamplight. Gratitude is not an inheritance. It's a choice. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the slow rise of the river. Lena reached for the light switch near the door, pausing before she flicked it off. Behind her, the empty chairs glowed faintly in the dim reflection, a perfect circle waiting for the next generation of guests who hadn't yet realized they were already welcome. She whispered to the quiet room, "Tradition earned, not inherited." Then she turned off the lights, locking the door with steady hands. In the darkened reflection, her silhouette lingered for a moment, strong, serene, untouchable, before fading into the night outside. The night air over Savannah was cool, the kind that whispered of endings. The Charleston room glowed like an ember against the darkness, its tall windows misted with the warmth of the people still inside. Lena stood just beyond the doorway, watching as the last guests lingered. Volunteers stacking plates, children chasing each other between tables, voices mingling in that tender hum that always followed a meal shared in good faith. It was the second annual Thanksgiving of Gratitude, and somehow it felt even fuller than the first. Ava caught her eye across the room, raising a hand from the buffet line. "We did it again," she mouthed. Lena smiled, that quiet, contained kind of joy she'd learned to treasure. She walked slowly through the ballroom, each step echoing faintly off the gleaming floorboards she'd chosen herself years ago. The scent of roasted herbs still hung in the air, mixed with vanilla and candle smoke. At the nearest table, a firefighter she recognized from last year was tucking a folded napkin into his jacket pocket. "For luck," he said when she noticed. "Then it's yours," Lena replied. "Every bit of it." Across the room, a group of foster teens were laughing over leftover pie. Their voices filled the high ceilings, bright and unguarded. One of the girls, a small thing with braids and a glittering name tag that read Ava, caught Lena's hand as she passed. "This was the best Thanksgiving I ever had," the girl said earnestly. "Like, the kind you see in movies?" Lena's throat tightened. She knelt slightly, meeting the girl's eyes. "Good," she whispered. "Then you come back next year. We'll keep the same seat for you." Ava nodded fiercely before running off to join her friends. When Lena rose, Ava was beside her, clipboard under one arm, exhaustion and pride sharing space on her face. "You realize," Ava said, "this thing's taken on a life of its own." "That's the hope," Lena said. "It should outgrow me." "Not yet," Ava teased. "You're still the heart of it." Lena smiled but didn't argue. Some truths didn't need repeating. By 9, the room had begun to empty. The last of the volunteers gathered near the entryway, laughing as they stacked trays and collected candles. Nina appeared among them, coat over one arm, a small box in her hand. "You're staying late again," she said to Lena. "Old habits," Lena replied. Nina opened the box and held out a gleaming brass key on a ribbon. "Then here," she said. "A new one. They replaced the locks when we updated security. Figured this one was yours." Lena turned it over in her palm. The engraving caught the light. "L. Blake, founder." She smiled. "It's beautiful." "It's earned," Nina corrected. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. The kind of silence that carried gratitude, not emptiness. Then Nina slipped her arm through Lena's, steering her gently toward the doors. "Come on. Ava and I will finish up tomorrow. Go home before you start alphabetizing the candles again." Lena laughed softly. "I don't do that anymore." "Sure," Nina said. "Tell that to the drawer of neatly labeled tea bags in your kitchen." By 10, the Charleston room had quieted completely. The tables stood gleaming, every glass and plate washed, every chair perfectly aligned. The chandeliers shimmered low, their reflections rippling across the polished oak like liquid gold. Lena walked the length of the room alone, her heels clicking softly, her fingertips grazing each table edge as she passed. Every detail, the circle of chairs, the framed photo on the wall, the faint scent of wax and citrus, felt alive, familiar, home. She stopped beneath the framed picture near the entrance, the one of last year's event, now joined by a second. This year's group, larger and louder, children laughing mid-motion. Beneath it, a new brass plate gleamed. Legacy is not what you leave behind, but what you pass forward. She read it twice, tears welling, the kind she didn't bother hiding. Ava appeared again, slipping her coat on. "They're waiting on you to lock up, boss," she said. Lena wiped at her cheek, smiling. "Then let's do it right." They walked together toward the door, and as Ava turned off the last switch, the chandeliers dimmed to a soft golden glow, like the afterimage of a memory refusing to fade. At the threshold, Lena paused. The volunteers were outside now, waving goodnight. The air filled with laughter and the rustle of coats. She looked back one last time. The Charleston room shimmered behind her, aglow and silent, every chair empty yet full of presence. "Ready?" Ava asked gently. Lena nodded. She stepped outside, the key cool and solid in her hand. She turned it in the lock slowly, hearing the soft click echo through the hall. The sound wasn't of closure. It was of completion. She pocketed the key, drew in the sharp coastal air, and let her gaze drift across the cobblestones toward the distant street. Somewhere out there, she imagined Mitchell and Lauren scrolling through their screens, still trying to reclaim a narrative that was no longer theirs. Lena exhaled, steady and sure. "Next year," she said quietly, her breath turning to mist. "They'll still be watching from the outside." And with that, she turned toward the street, the soft rhythm of her footsteps fading into the night, leaving behind the light of a room that, at last, belonged entirely to her.